All right, guys, welcome back. So where we're at today is, as you can see behind me, we finished our level 4 on the sides. Either side we have a level 5. The ceiling we have a level 2. There's another video that explains what those levels are and what they mean. But we're all sanded out. We have our corner, where we at? We have our corner bead that's sanded out, the bull nose. We have our regular corner bead that's squared off, that's sanded out. So it's cold today, man. I'm cold in my garage, right? So I got the Mr. Heater Buddy thing working, but it's still cold. So when you get to the end of your hand finishing with your tools, you have two choices. You can either leave it bare with no texture, or you can do a texture. So when it's bare with no texture, it's a level 4, level 5. They call it a skim coat. They call it a slick wall. They call it a level 5 smooth wall. Different ways to say it, but it just means that there's no texture. The other way that you can put or finish your drywall is with a texture. So today we're going to talk about the different ways to do texture, and in the next following videos we're going to do some application of the different types and different ways to apply these textures. So let me adjust the camera here. Well, actually first let me say, so there's two types of textures. There's a hand texture and there's a spray texture. Now the application is in the name itself, hand texture, spray texture. The hand texture, you're applying it somehow by hand, whether you're using a trowel or a knife, if you're using some type of a sponge or a roller, that's a hand texture. You're putting it on by hand. The other one is a spray texture, which you're going to use some type of an apparatus that has airflow going through it. So a hopper, some type of a rig, maybe there's another one, I can't remember what it's called. You don't actually need a compressor with it. It circulates its own air. It escapes me, but there's a third kind where you don't need a compressor, and we'll talk about that when I get into the airless or the compressor ones. Anyways, let me just show you what we have here. Okay, so starting on this side are your hand textures. So these little sponges come in a 2-pack, and one's for orange peel and one's for knockdown, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But these are little sponges, and that's one way. Another way are things that you can put with brushes, and these are for crow's foot or just different kinds that you have to kind of just dab on, and we'll go over those. Another way is by using a roller, paint roller. You've seen in my other videos I have a texture roller. It's just a different type of nap. It's not wool, it's more of a plastic. But you can apply your texture by just dipping this in the mud, and various ways that you can make a texture with that. This is a knife. It's a wipe down blade that you're going to use for knockdown, and you'll see that in the video coming up. Then we're going to move over to what I'm going to call semi-air texture. So most of you guys are probably familiar with the can textures. You know, I'm not endorsed or sponsored by any products, I'm just showing you. So there's various kinds, whatever box store, they probably carry different ones, but there's this one, for example. Now this one I was actually given by a foreman, and what it has is different. The settings are here, they're kind of built in. I forgot how to turn it. Oh, there it goes. So you can turn it, the little knob, and you have different orifices from big to small. And the idea is you have a hopper that goes on top, which is a hopper like this. This one doesn't go with it, but the ones they sell with this are like a milk carton. So you put that on top, and then you pump this. And as you're pumping the air, the material is drawing down, and the air is pushing that out this way. So let me see. So you're pumping the air, the material's in here, it's pushing down, and then it's spitting out. So you don't need an air compressor with this one. It's just by hand, but it doesn't work that great. It just drips. It drips down, and it makes a big old fat mess. So I've only used this a couple of times, but I want to show it. Your discretion if you buy it. I don't know, maybe $100, maybe a little bit over $100, but I don't know. We'll probably do like a little something with it just so I can show you guys. Okay, let me turn this a little bit. So then we get into our compressors, okay? Now these are called hoppers. A hopper is a tool where this part is gonna hook up to a compressor like here. So you have to have a compressor hose, and then you have different fittings. So you had different fittings down here. I don't know if you guys can see that. I don't want them to drop. Nope, that ain't gonna work. All right, well, you kind of get the idea, right? There's 3 different fittings. You have your biggest one, which is this. Then you have a medium one, which is this. Then you have your smallest one, which is this. And they all do different textures, different style textures. And the same idea as that pump spray that I just showed you. So the air compressor goes here. You're feeding the mud through the top. You're adjusting your air with this, and then you're spraying. Pull the trigger and it sprays out, right? Force fed. I think it's called force fed. Okay. Now moving on to these ones. These are a little bit better of a product. I have 2 setups the way that I use them. So on these, the same deal. You still need a compressor for the bottom. Okay. And then these have 4 tips as well. These ones have a big orifice, a little bit smaller than that, and then your smallest orifice. And again, they're all for different types of textures that you can do. So the way that I use these is I don't like the way these come out because those tips don't really match or blend as well as my other ones. So I rigged it so I could fix it because again, I just don't like using these metal tips. If that's your option, that's your option. You're gonna try the best you can with it. We're gonna go ahead and use this down the line just so I can show you. So what I came up with is on the bottom of this actually goes to a bigger machine that I have, and I'll show you guys those in a minute, but there's a hose that connects to this and it feeds from a bucket, okay? But because I want to just carry this around with smaller patches, what I've done is I've added this little adapter. It's just some plumbing part, right? And then I can put this on here. And then I carry it around, right? And I can use it for spraying the texture, and it just gives me a better match. The other option is this one, which is the same thing. I mean, it's big. It's the same thing, right? This one's just set up and it didn't fit on my table. So, compressor hose, your adjustable airflow, you have your tip, your nozzle, and then you have your big old bucket where the mud goes in. Mud forces down, the air is pressing up, and it's spitting it out as it's being sprayed. So finally, I have these 2 compressors. Now these I only use on bigger jobs. I'll use the small hoppers for patches, but anything that's more than, let's say, a sheet or 2 sheets, I'm gonna bust out these 2. This can hold a 5-gallon bucket and this can hold a 6-gallon bucket. Now this one, I do have to still use a compressor with it because it doesn't have a motor. It's just basically a bucket that feeds the mud through this tube. And that's what I was showing you, the tube. This part connects to here, and there's a motor in here that pushes that mud up through the hose and it'll come out the same way. And then this connects to this one. Now, on this other one I have, this bigger one. Ouch. This bigger one is same deal. I have a hose. It's about 20 foot hose. And the connection here is on here. So there's a compressor in this box. So it's a self-contained unit. I have the mud on top, there's a compressor down here. There's a switch that lets you switch from either just using the small one with the bucket on top or by using the whole bucket. I can put the compressor hose on here. That's there. And then I hook up the other part, this part, to here. So you just have to remember your PB&J, your project, your budget, and your job size. The texture machine or the texture rig that you're going to use is going to depend on how big your patches are, how big your renovation is, how big your project is really. So if it's something that's small, then I'll use the nails for nail pops, what I call a nail pop. It's when the nail starts protruding through the drywall. And I'll just do a little bit touching with that sponge because I don't want it to get too big. The other ones is if I'm trying to match a texture, or I use that like the crow's foot or the paint roller to try to match something. I'll be honest, I never use a can. I don't like the way they match. I don't like the way they come out. But with that said, it's because I already have all these other ones, okay? If you're just starting out, if you are a homeowner or a DIYer and you're looking to do your own repairs, don't go and break the bank, right? Don't get the bigger stuff that I have. You can use a patch. Only you're gonna know where it's at. You can try to blend it in. I'll show you again when we get into the patches. But you paint it, it's gonna hardly be noticeable. And if you do want to notice something, I'm gonna mess some of you guys up right now. If you want to notice something, you can go look at all your texture in your house, throughout your whole house. There's not a real consistent pattern. I mean, you're gonna have heavy spots, lighter spots, more of a void in some spots, gaps in other spots. It's just when we shoot texture on big houses or big jobs, there's never consistency. We run out of mud, we gotta mix up muds. Maybe somebody didn't mix it up the same consistency, or maybe the pressure doesn't come out the same as it was going for a while. So there's always a little bit of inconsistency in the texturing. So don't be hard on yourself if you can't match it 100%. But the cans, I just don't use the cans because I have the other apparatuses that I can use for it. And then, like I said, the hoppers, I manufactured my hopper so that way I could use my bigger gun for the smaller patches. And then I do use the other two when I have big jobs. When I just have like small commercial, or I have something that I don't want to carry that little one around. The big one I have, it has wheels on it. So it's your discretion. And if your job is big, here's the cool thing. So years ago I bought that big one. I don't know, it was like $1,000 or something. This was back in like maybe 2004, 2005, around there. I think I paid like $1,000. Well, it broke and I couldn't fix it. I didn't know how to fix it. So I ended up finding the little one at a pawn shop. And the little one at the pawn shop I bought like in Hesperia, California. I think it was like $125. I took up some water up there, asked them if I could plug it in just to make sure that it pumped out and everything. So I found that one at a pawn shop for $125. You could probably find them on Craigslist. I'm sorry, Craigslist. You can find them on Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace, for a discounted rate. Same thing with the big one. The big one, I don't know how much they're going for right now, but I actually bought this one off of another guy that doesn't use it anymore. So I bought it for, my first job paid for it back. So you can rent them though. You don't have to buy one. You can rent them. Some Home Depots rent them, and depending again how big your job is, you can go ahead and rent them and just knock out a big renovation or a big room addition in no time because of the way that is. All right, see you on the next one.